So previously I talked about an approach that you can use to learn to play modes. And this is using the pentatonic scale. So if you can use a pentatonic scale to play major and minor keys, then you can also use it to play over modes as well. And I thought I'd demonstrate it this week using the Dorian and the Lydian modes. So let's flip things around a little bit. Let's start with the assumption that you already know how to play the pentatonic scale. So if I draw them all out in front of you, now if you look inside these shapes, you'll see these shapes can all be built from two really simple shapes as well, and I've colour coded them green and yellow. So one is just across two strings, and then the other one is across three strings. And when you look inside the shapes, you can see that these occur everywhere in the pentatonic scale. And I've talked about this in length in previous videos, so check out, I've got a playlist if you want to check that out, or I'm creating a course and I've got all of this starting from first principles all the way up to playing modes as well in that course as well. So check that out in the description. That's free to enroll and do with what you want. Anyway, we can start with these two shapes and just add two extra notes to each of the shapes. So for the green shape, we can add one note there and the other note there. And on the yellow shape, we add another note there and the other note there. And then we take those and we use them to overlay on the pentatonic scales that we've already got. And when you do that, you have 5 positions of the Dorian and the Lydian mode. And you'll notice I've not indicated the root note on any of these scale shapes, and the reason for that is for these, just like the pentatonic scale, it depends whether you're playing in a major key or a minor key, and that uses a different note as a root note, and you do exactly the same thing with these scale shapes as well. So if we look at each of the modes in particular, you'll see what I mean. If we start with the Dorian mode, you can see that this is a mode, this is a minor mode. So the Dorian mode is the same as the natural minor scale, but it's got a natural 6th instead of a flattened 6th. And that's the difference, just there. And just there as well. So that's the difference between the Dorian mode and the natural minor mode. And if you look inside these shapes as well, you'll see that there are actually 2 extra pentatonic scales within each of the positions as well. So you've got the original one. So I'm playing in A minor, and there's my original one. And inside it as well, you've got a B minor pentatonic. So this is based on chord 2 of the Dorian mode. Just there. And then you've got an E minor pentatonic as well, so this is chord 5. And these are useful to bring out different kinds of colours when you're improvising, so it's worth understanding these. But actually, if you're new to the Dorian mode, if you're new to modes in general, the best way of getting and understanding the sound of a mode is to look at the chords and the harmony first, because that really defines what a mode is. So if you look at the Dorian mode, the best thing to do is, there's a couple of ways of doing this. One is to just look at some of the extended chords. So for example, for the Dorian mode, the minor 6th is the chord that really kind of defines the Dorian mode. And in my ear, it's got that kind of that funk. Hear that? So that's one way you can kind of, understand the Dorian mode sound. The other thing you can do is to just play around with chords, with simple chord sequences. A very classic way of doing this is to just create a pedal note, which is just basically a note that you don't change, and use that to emphasize a root. So I'm just going to play an A, and then A minor, and then slide it up to B minor. So that really kind of defines that Dorian mode. yeah, in that chord sequence. The final way that people use the Dorian mode actually is over the blues scale. So if you think of the blues scale is just a pentatonic scale with that extra blues note, yeah? And if you've ever messed around with the blues and just sort of just done that kind of thing, filled in the gaps, 4-3-1, 4-3-1, 4-3-1, then what you're doing is you're using the Dorian mode in conjunction with the blues scale. Yeah. So that's the Dorian mode. Okay, so what about using it in a major context? Well, when you do that with this particular scale shape, you end up with the Lydian mode. So the Lydian mode can be thought of as a major scale with a sharpened fourth instead of a natural fourth. Yeah. And that creates that characteristic Lydian kind of sound to it. And just like in the previous case, inside each of these scale positions, you can see another 2 pentatonics on top of the original. So you've got that original one. So what am I? I'm in A major here. So inside here, we've got a B major Lydian, a B major pentatonic. And we've got an E major pentatonic. And these can be really useful actually when you're playing over the Lydian, as I'll talk about in a moment. But again, when you're playing Lydian, the best thing to do is to start to explore the chords, explore the harmony. So the kinds of sounds that really kind of define the Lydian, the extended chords that define it, or anything with kind of a major 7th and a sharp 11th. So something like that kind of a sound is a very Lydian kind of a sound. So this is a major 9 sharp 11. And it has that kind of a floaty feel to it. And you hear how that fits. And just like before, you can create simple chord progressions over a pedal note. So again, if I use an A pedal and play that A major this time, I can alternate between A major and B major, and that defines that Lydian kind of a sound as well. Okay, so that's kind of what Lydian brings out. Now, one thing it's worth understanding with the Lydian sound actually is that there's a kind of a gotcha, a trap that people fall in, and this is around the root note and the 5th note. And it kind of depends on the chord progression, the chords that you're playing over as well. But you may find when you're improvising with the Lydian, the root note kind of doesn't fit, or it kind of clashes, which really confuses people, because you'd think the root note would be right in the pocket of the harmony. It'd be a really obvious note to be able to use and be able to use nice and consonantly, but it kind of doesn't work. And the other note that you may struggle with as well is the 5th, surprisingly enough as well. So why is that? Well, if you listen to that Lydian sound again, there's my major 9 sharp 11th. Now what's happening there is I'm playing the major 7th note there, and when I try and play that root, I get this kind of this clash between the note that I'm playing and what's going on in the harmony. And similarly, there is that sharp 11th or sharp 4 there, and if I try and play the 5th, we get that kind of a clash as well. So this is why these notes can be sometimes a little bit difficult, or there's some tension there which you wouldn't expect. Now what can you do about that? Well, there's a couple of things you can do. One is to experiment with the other pentatonic scales that I've talked about. Because if you use the E major pentatonic, the pentatonic based on the 5th, that replaces that root with the major 7th. Okay, so that manages that major 7th root kind of clash going on, if you want to do that. And the other pentatonic scale, using the one based on chord 2, which would be the B major pentatonic. And that manages both that root to major 7th and that 5th down to sharp 4. Okay, so that's a couple of ways of working around this as well. So that's the Lydian mode. Okay, so let's put a couple of exercises together to help you kind of work around this as well. And the things I would want you to do is firstly to explore the harmonies inside these modes. As I say, just play around, look for some minor 6th sounds. If you're playing over the Dorian mode, just play around with minor 6th chords and get used to the sounds of those, because that's the sound that the Dorian is built on. And obviously play with chord progressions as well. And with Lydian, as I say, it's any kind of major 7th with a sharp 11 added, anything like that, or major 9th with a sharp 11. Have a look around for a few chords like that, a few different voicings of that, because that brings out the Lydian sound. And as I say, you can play around with different chord progressions as well that include B and A, any chords that have notes coming out of the Lydian which emphasize that sharp 4 a little bit, then any progressions like that are useful to play around with as well. So what I've done as well in the description is I've added a couple of backing tracks. These are just backing tracks I've found online on YouTube. There's a whole load of different backing tracks on YouTube, so it's well worth just having a surf on there, finding a few Dorian sounds, a few Lydian sounds, and just playing around with it. But that's it for this week. Hopefully that was useful for you, and maybe we'll talk about a couple of the other modes next time. Anyway, that's it. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.